Here I am in the Kilns, C.S. Lewis's house on the edge of Oxford, built in 1922. There were kilns in the gardens. There's a legend that Shelley used to come to this area, and there's a lake, you can't see it, over there, up that shot over hill. It's not very much of a hill. When C.S. Lewis bought it in 1930, along with his brother, Warnie, and Janie King Moore, they had 9 acres of ground. It was open countryside around here. It's very built up now. So they had 5,000 books in the house, but a lot of these are not original. Some of his books are here, which he didn't have in those times. Map of Narnia. Come in. You're not. I'm filming me. Yeah. So what should I say? So it's a two-story house, lovely house, and then they bought it for £3,000. Obviously, that's worth way more in modern values. Then the Thirsk family bought it after Warnie died in 1973. They extensively renovated, did it in 1970s aesthetic, but then they only had it for a few years. It was more or less dilapidated. 1993, it was bought by the C.S. Lewis Foundation, and they had American students coming over to volunteer on working holidays for several years to make it habitable again. None of the furniture is original in this room, unfortunately. And what else should I tell you? So, there's scholars who live in here. We can't go into their bedrooms. We went upstairs and so on. That's the loo and the sink are in separate rooms. A bit unhygienic. See the kitchen here? How about that? For a kitchen with an Aga. The windows are original. The Thirks threw them out. They were in the garage. And then after the Thirks gave up the house, they put those back in. Look, photos of them here. And that is his stepson, Gresham. Is it Douglas Gresham? It's Douglas and David, and so on. So, they had some sort of groundsman, and he's the inspiration of one of the characters. So the scholars live here, and they also act as guides. So £20 for an adult, 15 for concessions. And that's down there to the to one of the bedrooms and so on. Okay, maybe that's enough. I'm not sure if we're allowed to film or not, but they have to tidy up their bedrooms. Only available for us 3 days a week. Like that, one of the bedrooms, and beyond to the garage. The garage is now sort of a conference room. It wasn't actually a room when they were here. There we go, and they do actually use these as bedrooms for the scholars, but they have to tidy them up and get out for a few hours, 3 days a week when the tourists are coming around. So that's a few of the kilns. Don't go into that door because someone might be up to whatever in there. It's still a functioning residence, a private residence. So operated by the C.S. Lewis Trust, the C.S. Lewis Foundation or whatever. So they try to restore as faithfully as possible to the aesthetics of 1930, 1963, when he died. He died in here in one of the bedrooms, which one of the scholars actually lives in. So he lived here with Jenny King Moore, his friend's mother, Paddy Moore. Was it a mother-son relationship with him? Was it a romantic relationship? We suspect it was romantic. Their bedrooms were adjoining, but when C.S. Lewis started to have his fervent Christian faith, he said he couldn't do that. Partly that was adultery. She was still married to her husband, who was back in Ireland. He was the chief engineer for a railway company there. So C.S. Lewis met Paddy Moore at Oxford in 1917. C.S. Lewis went to University College Oxford for 1 term. Then he went to Keble College when he was training for the army. He'd volunteered for the army. Because he was from Ireland, he wasn't really conscripted. There was an exemption in the First World War. Although the whole of Ireland was part of the United Kingdom, Ireland was not subject to conscription, but he volunteered anyway. So did he refer to himself as British? I think he claimed British citizenship, but wasn't particularly unionist. And anyway, then he and Paddy Moore made a promise to each other. If one of them survived, the other one would look after the other guy's family. But there was a pre-sentiment Paddy Moore had that he'd get killed, and indeed he was, in April 1918, about a month after getting to France. So he left his mother alive and his little sister Maureen, and then C.S. Lewis came back to Oxford after the war to complete his degree, and then he lodged with Mrs. Moore, but was possibly her lover, remained good friends with Maureen all her life. Maureen subsequently inherited an aristocratic title. Lady Dunbar was very, very unusual at the time. So C.S. Lewis was an atheist when his mother died when he was 9. His mother, Florence, born Miss Hamilton. She had a very distinguished line of bishops and MPs in Ireland, had distant Scots ancestry. His paternal grandfather had come from Wales, was Lewis, and they moved to Cork, where I'm from, but had some sort of boiler-making company. So C.S. Lewis's father, he moved to Dublin, then to Belfast, been a very successful solicitor, was a workaholic, creature of habit, and rather unemotional. So much so that when C.S. Lewis was injured in the First World War and in a hospital in England, his father refused to visit him, saying would it interrupt his work timetable. So C.S. Lewis' elder brother, Warnie, he left the army about 1930, early retirement with the logistics school, which possibly saved his life because it was so good at doing logistics. There was tons of munitions and rations to organise shipping to France, distributing by truck and train, and so never actually had to go into action. But anyway, he was a career army officer, had been commissioned after going to Sandhurst just before the First World War, and he served all the way through it. He was posted to the Far East at some point, Warner, and he was it was there. He went to Japan briefly on his way. He had been some British Army base in China. There were British Army bases in China in those days. And then he stopped off in Japan and saw a huge Buddha statue, which brought him back to Christianity. They'd been nominal members of the Church of Ireland. So C.S. Lewis, he grew up in Little Lee on the edge of Belfast, I think a bit to the east of the city. Lee meaning like field in Anglo-Saxon. And it's when C.S. Lewis' mother died when he was 9. That's when C.S. Lewis lost his Christian faith. He went to Malvern College in England, partly because his father said he couldn't cope with the two boys. And then he was unhappy there. He was no good at sports. And he was sort of kind of unpopular for being too intelligent. But what else about C.S. Lewis? And then he briefly went to Campbell College in Belfast. The whole thing about The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, you know, the lamppost, that's inspired by a lamppost outside Campbell College. He was unhappy there. And when he was in his late teens, his father had him live with William Kirkpatrick. William Kirkpatrick being the father of Mr. Lewis earlier. So William Kirkpatrick was retired to Bookham, a small town in southern England. So C.S. Lewis lived with him as his only pupil and was tutored by him. So C.S. Lewis was academically precocious, and languages, classics was really the mainstay of the curriculum, Latin and ancient Greek, anything like that. Philosophy, taught the Socratic method, but was not good at mathematics. Had his Oxford interview in December 1916, and had to sit his responsions, which was the admissions exam for Oxford University from about 1820 to about 1960, ancient Greek, Latin, and maths. So there was no English exam, but obviously you'd only be good at Greek and Latin if you were superb at English. But he couldn't pass maths. But there was an exception made for people who'd volunteered for the army. They didn't have to pass the mathematics exam. Now, had it not been for that, C.S. Lewis never would have attended Oxford, despite him being one of the most renowned intellectuals to have enrolled at the university. So then he came to the university, and as I say, he came back after the First World War. He got a first-class degree in classics, and then he did the 3-year English degree in 1 year. He never actually pursued a higher degree. So in those days, you could have a full academic career without a doctorate, or even a master's degree. So he was always Mr. Lewis, although he did get the professorship later. So he was at, his academic career was at Magdalen College, Oxford mostly, and then Magdalen College, Cambridge in the late 1950s.